Hi guys, Joe here, and welcome to 750 Gaming. In this one, we'll talk about the Emperor's Children, and how they are a great choice to make a 750 point starter army with, and how we can do it for less than £100. The Imperium's proud 3rd Legion Astartes, the Emperor's Children. Originally known simply as the 3rd Legion, they were renamed after their father, the Emperor of Mankind, and to his children the Emperor embodied the ultimate form of perfection, his example alone being what they would aspire to become. From its earliest days, the Legion was recognised and renowned for its aspiration, this perfection in all things. A desire that was shared by their Primarch, Fulgrim, once they were reunited. But of course it was an impossible aspiration, and it was this folly that ultimately led Fulgrim and his legion into the services of the Chaos god Slaanesh, and towards their ultimate ruin. It was during the crusade upon the planet Laren that Fulgrim's pride would begin its trial. Finding a relic sword so magnificent and powerful in the depths of the planet, he would choose to wield it, believing it to be a far greater weapon than the one he currently possessed, one master-crafted and gifted to him by his brother, Ferrus Manus. Unbeknownst to the Primarch, this Leia sword was actually a demon blade, and the blade's soul would whisper to his own, slowly bending his heart and mind to the desires of the Slaaneshi demon within. Inevitably then, it was not long before Fulgrim gave over to the power of chaos completely. Hindsight informs, it would come as no surprise that during the Great Heresy, Fulgrim would commit the great betrayal by joining forces with his brother Horus in challenging the might of the Imperium and ultimately his father. And if the betrayal was not apparent enough, then it was made clear by Fulgrim's further action. For in league with the Chaos god Slaanesh, the Primarch ascended to demonhood, a prince of the Neverborn, a lord of the ruinous power, the chosen and beloved champion of Slaanesh. And as such, the Emperor of Mankind, the one in whom Fulgrim had once seen that ultimate perfection modelled, was no longer the height of aspiration for his child. After the Horus Heresy, where the traitor legions were defeated, scattered and flung into their own legion wars, what remained of the Emperor's children were fragmented into smaller warbands of varying numbers. Long gone were the days of well-ordered formations and perfect ideals. Each individual heretic now self-absorbed with a pathological devotion to Slaanesh in a private crusade for new sensations and new pleasures, they joined forces together in these warbands for their own benefit alone. Strength in numbers being a quicker route to attainment of said pleasures. In his own pursuit of perfection, it is recorded that Chief Apothecary Fabius Bile created many abominations, corrupted and twisted by Slaanesh as he sought the ultimate form of Astartes. One of these horrors being the cacophony, heretics with forbidden surgical augmentations and formidable psychosonic weaponry. This genetic template of mutation and heightened senses would later form the Noise Marines, those of the Emperor's children who had given themselves fully over to their depraved desires. Eventually, only the din of battle and screams of fear, pain and terror can reward a Noise Marine with the pleasure they crave. These then are the epitome of what the Emperor's children have become, and a symbol of how far they have fallen from grace. Essentially, they are just some really messed up dudes. And whilst this background of depravity has the potential to make them not suitable for work, shall we say, there is something about the flamboyance and the eccentricity of excess that makes modelling an Emperor's Children army and playing it on the tabletop quite, enjoyable. I also think they work thematically at 750 scale. As I've mentioned before and will undoubtedly repeat again and again, 40k these days is mainly geared towards bigger tournament-ready meta-chasing 2,000 point battles. It's a size of game that kind of works thematically for, say, the Ultramarines with their rigid adherence to the Codex Astartes, where you can imagine a whole company landing en masse as an army proper, heading for war. Even more so with the bazillion troops you need to take should you be commanding a guard army. Those ideas can work well represented at 2,000 points, and that's all totally okay. But a smaller, patrol-esque detachment of, say, Ultramarines feels a bit odd, a bit underwhelming. Like, where's the rest of your army, guys? Which is why some factions or sub-factions will work better for this than others. But I think the Emperor's Children, with their post-heresy ragtag warband, we've only come together in this small number to make it easier to kill stuff mentality, works quite well. So, how do we do it? How do we make a coherent and somewhat balanced but also fun and fluffy Emperor's Children army for just 750 points? How do we keep the Children of Excess within our criteria to have a mindful budget of time, money and energy? Well, here's my idea, and it starts with a Chaos Space Marine Combat Patrol Box. Because this is one of those rare occasions where actually you get quite a lot of bang for your buck with a box set. And if we think about what units we want in this army, well, yeah, you can get quite a lot of them here. But first off, let's see what 750 points of Chaos Space Marines can look like. How do we compose this army? Let's get the list down, and then I'll explain how we created it using that combat patrol box, and how ultimately we used its contents to shape our list in the first place. So, like many of our 750 armies, we're going to be using a classic 9th edition patrol detachment. So on this occasion, for these guys, we're going to be looking at 2 HQs, 2 troops, and 1 elite choice. And what units are we going to pick to assemble this ragtag warband of profligacy? Well, looking at the lore and the fluff and all of that, then in my mind we should definitely be taking some of those Noise Marines. And I think, looking at the other unit choices available to Chaos Space Marines, I really like the idea of this mess being led, if that's the right term, by a Demon Prince. One of the fun things about the Emperor's Children is that Noise Marines count as troops as opposed to elites. Now of course that doesn't matter too much for us in a 750 army, but it is good news to consider should we ever want to upscale this army in the future. I think considering the fluff surrounding Fulgrim and his ascent to demonhood, we should definitely try and include some sort of semblance to that story arc in our HQ choice. You know, if we're creative with our paint and modelling scheme, we can definitely get something resembling the Primarch himself, roleplay it as some sort of shard of Fulgrim as we battle out on the field of war. It'll also be a significant points cost. After all, it's a significantly strong unit, meaning that we can cover a significant portion of our 750 point budget with the time and effort it takes to just paint the one model or miniature. And if we're clever about it, we can probably save some dosh along the way too. Right, okay, so to the list. Our Demon Prince. First and foremost, he's got to have wings. It's an extra 35 points, but I mean, is it even a demon if it doesn't have wings? A 12-inch movement range and the fly keyword will go a long way here, especially on a small board. Now, this beast will be our warlord, but for the sake of the Slaneshi fun, we're going to go with the Unbound Arrogance trait. Now, it's semi-pointless as a warlord trait, in that it doesn't really do anything to buff your army or anything like that. But honestly, it's just a laugh. Many people will disregard it because it's a game within a game of pure chance that doesn't help you win. But I don't care about winning, I just care about having fun. So a little bit of bluff and gambling under the table to get a few extra attacks for your Demon Prince is just jokes and takes all the seriousness out of the game. I love it. He'll be a psyker, naturally. I mean, what abomination from the warp that wants to be taken seriously isn't? He'll get smite, and as he is a demon of Slaanesh, he has to take Delightful Agonies. But that's actually a decent on-brand Feel No Pain buff for a friendly unit within range, so that's good. I've also opted for Infernal Gaze, which I know isn't all that dissimilar from Smite, but does give us a double up possibility, which could be very, very tasty. In melee, he's going to be base 6 attacks with a -3 AP damage-free Hellforged sword, plus another with those Malefic Talons, and anything else you get from your Unbound Arrogance play. Just don't get in his way. He's a big boy, coming in at 180 points, but it's all good. Now, for the second slot, we'll go with a Dark Apostle. Think of him as a heretical chaplain, some sort of chaos-influenced cheerleader chanting out heretical encouragement. You know, if you can't imagine him screaming Slaaneshi war songs, then you aren't role-playing this properly. I see him as having corralled the rest of the heretics together, and that somehow with all his weird and wonderful worship, they've somehow summoned the demon to the battlefield. And I'm pretty sure that's how you got your demons onto the battlefield anyway, once upon a time, he says, trying to remember back to his 3rd edition childhood. Oh, and of course, you get a Dark Apostle in that combat patrol box. Good. Take your pick of chants, etc. Dark Zealotry comes as standard for melee hit rerolls, but then I tend to go with Omens of Potency should I feel the need to make this chap a close combat god. He also has his minions around to help buff him and his own chanting and tank a few hits. Yeah, a useful unit at 110 points. That's 290 for the HQ lump. The first troops are relatively simple. We'll take some melee-focused legionaries, letting them all take bolt pistols and chainswords, etc. because, you know, we're all Slaaneshi and up in your face, nasty, trying to bite it off. You can give your aspiring champion a power weapon of your choice. I went for a power sword on this occasion. Now, standard affairs would have a unit of 10 legionaries. The obvious temptation as a Space Marine player would be to split that blob into 2 groups of 5. You know, if they were loyal Space Marines, we'd have that little combat squad rule. Alas, heresy. You see, now there's a requirement with armies allied to a Chaos God, which, in the case of the Emperor's Children, they certainly are, and it's definitely Slaanesh. It means that in order to access those special rules, you need to tack that 15-point mark of that god upgrade onto every unit. So having 2 proper separate legionary squads here would actually mean an additional 15-point mark of Slaanesh on that second squad. Now, I'm all for points bloat at the appropriate times to make putting together these armies as easy as possible, but in this case it actually harms our end goal, and with the next few selections we'd actually take the total army points over the 750 target. So one big blob of 10 it is, 200 points, 490 in total so far. Now, as I said, we'll need some Noise Marines. So we'll go with the squad of 5 to fill the other troop slot we've earmarked. We obviously need one to be wielding a Blastmaster, but the rest can have just the standard, if that's a thing, sonic weapons, including the aspiring champ here as well, but he can have a chainsword to go with it, for the fun and the points and all of that. 140 points, and that's the fluff kinda all done. Elites choice-wise, we're going to go for a Hellbrute, and the most obvious reason for that is because you get one in the combat patrol box. But I think it also really works here. A corrupted dreadnought, you say? How interesting. Do go on. Well, indeed. How about a critically injured heretic Astartes who wasn't content to die until perfection was attained, so that he became one with a machine to live out eternity as a demon engine striving for pleasure? Yeah, that'll do it. A standard plasma cannon for rangedness, and we'll go with the Power Scourge because I just think it looks a bit nicer on the model. Put it this way, I prefer flailing metal tentacles to fleshy fists or hammers. I'm sure Freud would probably have a field day there. Anyway, plus your mark of Slaanesh, that's another 120 point lump of pain-bringing glory. And so here's our list. 1 shard of Fulgrim Demon Prince, 1 Dark Apostle and his 2 friends, a squad of 10 Legionaries, a squad of 5 Noise Marines, and a Hellbrute. I made that 750 on the nose. So let's think about how this army is going to play out on the table then. The main points of note here, specific to this army being Emperor's Children, are the traits and the special rules. We're Slaanesh focused and we've paid our dues to mark every unit as such. Now that gives every unit a fights first in combat keyword, which is a strong start, but it also then gives us access to the flawless perfection ability, meaning we can ignore hit roll modifiers should we desire, so naturally that's anything that would negatively affect us here, and we also get improved AP on unmodified 6s, so that's all stronger still. Not only but also, we get access to the Let the Galaxy Burn rules, which for this list specifically gives the Noise Marines and the Hellbrute exploding 6s for their heavy weapons in battle round number 1, the Legionaries exploding 6s for their pistols in battle round 2, and then everyone exploding 6s in melee for the rest of the battle. Oh yeah baby! Now, stratagem wise, as per our 750 mantra, we'll need to choose the 3 we want to take into battle with us, alongside that 1 CP reroll. I do this to simplify the game and give everyone less to think about, and it's a far better experience than trying to remember everything, just to leverage that extra 1 situational percent. Once upon a time we would have taken Endless Cacophony, but, you know, it was a little overpowered, so well done Games Workshop for actually nerfing appropriately. Instead then, I choose Hatred Eternal, so that our Legionaries can shoot or fight again, and I then also take Excruciating Frequencies, because if we got the Noise Marines we should maximise their abilities as best we can. And then it's a little bit down to what army we're going to be playing against. Now, a lot of these 750 armies are going to be Space Marines. It's just a question of eliteness, which affects model count and availability and money spent, and yeah, Space Marines just fit this 750 thing better than most. So, on that basis, it would be folly not to take Death to the False Emperor. But on the occasions where we are playing something different, then I think there's scope to take Murderous Perfection instead. So how do I play this army? Well, it's similar to how I play my Black Templars. These guys want to be all up in your face and biting it off. The Hellbrute and the Noise Marines can do some damage from afar, whilst the Demon Prince and the Legionaries can get in and do the stuff. But all the units are also either big enough in number or strong enough in toughness and wounds that they can sit around on objectives and rack up the points if you need them to. But there is another option should you desire. You can instead give your Legionaries bolt guns, the shooty option, rather than all the melee weapons. And that then gives them useful access to the malicious volley rule to double all their shots. Mix that together with Hatred Eternal and Battle Round 2 exploding 6s, then that could be a very potent massive bolt of fire. Worth thinking about if you wanted to do it that way instead. Okay, so how is it done? Well, the trick here is to think both inside and outside of the box. That combat patrol box, that is. When I knew I wanted to put together an Emperor's Children army, I did my Chaos Space Marine research. It's all a balancing act between what units you want and how much they cost, or rather, how much you can get them for. In this case, the Chaos Space Marine combat patrol box actually gives you some decent content. The Dark Apostle and his minions are a solid, and in the EC's regard, a fluffy HQ option. You're probably going to be taking Legionaries as a troop choice anyway, and the Hellbrute is always decent. Plus, you get some Havocs if you want them. I got the box for 70 quid off of Whaling Games and will be using everything in the box in some way in this list, so that's a great deal. The Legionaries go all melee build, and for what I did further on, this is important. Now, there aren't quite enough bolt pistols and chainswords on the sprues for all of that, so you've got a choice. Model as best you can and play counts as, and I certainly have no problem with that in 750 games, or you kitbash. You either get some bits off of eBay or another bits site, or you go to your own bits box if you have one. So my legionaries have some regular Astartes issued chainswords and bolt pistols in amongst their ranks. You can't really tell. But if you do, well, then they were stolen off the corpses of their Space Marine enemies. So be it. The Dark Apostle is standard. I painted him up in very neutral colours. He's a bit more Black Legion-y maybe than specifically Emperor's Children, but that gives me scope to use him in other armies if I want to. He's a generic multi-army HQ choice here. Always thinking ahead, you see. Though, I did make all the Accursed Flames glow a bit of pink colour, for some Slaneshi homage. The Hellbrute is a Hellbrute. I posed him ever so slightly to give him a bit more dynamism, as opposed to just standing there like the coffin box dreadnoughts of old. And I chose the Power Scourge, as I said, because it felt a little bit more tentacly. And whilst the Plasma Cannon is a decent standard weapon, of all the options I thought it was the one that looked most like a sonic weapon. The Hellbrute Blastmaster is of course a legend option these days, but there's a ton of role playability available if you want it. So now then, those Havocs. Well, I'm not keen personally. I'm not sure proper heavy ranged weapons really fit the fluff. Standing at distance with a smegging great big once tank mounted las cannon on your shoulder, that doesn't feel very Slaneshi to me. I'm also not sure about it in general, nor shoulder mounted missile launchers for that. I don't know, there's something a little bit too quirky about it for me. I get it, it's a hangover from old Hammer, firstborn Space Marines, the ones that were kind of goofy, and whilst there's a nostalgia element, sure, I'm just not buying it. I'm sorry. I'm all for your Astra Militarum running around with missile launchers and RPGs, that kind of works for them. I just don't think it fits the Space Marines or the Chaos Space Marines fluff. So, yeah, unless they can all march in with underslung minigun assault cannons, which unfortunately they can't because there's only one on the sprue, then Havocs just aren't for me. But, with a few conversion parts, either sonic blasters direct from Games Workshop or, in my case, some mixed sonic guns by Spellcrow Studios, you can convert those Havocs into Noise Marines. With some creative cutting, modelling and a bit of green stuff to cover your mistakes and inaccuracies, you can use a few of those bolt gun holding arms from the Legionary sprue, the ones you aren't using because you gave them all chainswords and bolt pistols, to hold those sonic blasters and that bigger blastmaster. Don't forget to give the champion the chainsword that's on the Havoc sprue, along with his own sonic blaster. He can hold it in one hand and shoot from the hip. He's a champ, after all. The only real consideration to be aware of here is base size. Noise Marines should theoretically be on 32mm bases, Havocs go on 40s. I tried putting these guys on 32mm bases, but the stance of the Havoc models were just a bit too wide and it just didn't look right. So these guys will just have to go on the 40s. Just paint them up nice so that they're worth it. And so back to the Demon Prince. Now, obviously this guy isn't in your combat patrol box. So here you've got some choices to make. Now obviously Games Workshop make a few decent models that you could use here. The OG 40K Demon Prince model has recently just undergone a resculpt, and both that and the older one are perfectly fine. But naturally they'll set you back a bit of dollar. If you want to take the Age of Sigmar Chaos route, more travelled than you may think, then you could use a Keeper of Secrets or a Sigvold model. These are a bit different. In my opinion, both are actually really nice choices for that Slaneshi vibe, and Sigvold definitely feels Fulgrim proxy-ish. But they'll still be pricey new and less frequently available on the eBay floggers market. You're still going to be looking about £25, even if you do get them from your friendly local gaming store or website. However, if you shop around and cast your eyes over places like Etsy, you can pick up some beautiful sculpts that really fit the theme. I chose to pick up this beauty designed by Artisan Guild. I got it printed in resin by a UK-based company called Rum & Resin, who have all the printing licenses, and it cost me 16 quid. Also, after I went to town painting it with our Demon Ascended Primarch in mind, I'm really happy with how it fits my Shard of Fulgrim fluff. This just really works for me. Yeah, it's not a Games Workshop model. It's 100% a proxy, but it's a freaking nice one. And let's be honest, this is 750 gaming. We're clearly not building this army to take to official tournaments. We're probably not even going to be going to a Warhammer store looking for a pickup game. We're just a bunch of guys and girls who are probably scheduling a game with some like-minded mates weeks or months in advance because life is busy, and frankly, if someone turned up at my kitchen table with this model and told me it's a Demon Prince, there's a beer in the fridge. Let's go. So here is a slightly different 750 army. It's a mixture of ranged and melee units. Some objective holding units, some up in your face making a mess type of units. A cheerleader, and a big ass Mother Hubbard with wings. He's got Fulgrim feels, there's some Noise Marines, it's an army of Slanesh searching for pain and agony, and there's a lot of pink and purple splashed about. Emperor Children vibes aplenty. Fun, fun, fun. And it actually achieves all of that with just the 20 miniatures, which for realistic goal management is a dream. Assembling and painting one at a time shouldn't be too arduous. Even those of us who have the severest of constraints on our hobby time can hopefully schedule in 20 models in a sensible period of time. And if you decide to build and prime them all first and paint later, then 20 models shouldn't feel like an overbearing amount of unpainted plastic sitting on your shelf. Personally, I was a bit silly in that I left the blob of 10 legionaries until last, which did feel a bit of a grind after I'd painted all the fun stuff. But it wasn't a deal breaker. Now, of course, it's Chaos Space Marines. There's a shed load of trim and it can be tricky, and I agree. For many, many reasons, this Emperor's Children army is probably not one for the faint-hearted. But it is a viable option. And as we know, this whole 750 project is thoughts and ideas to save you time and energy. So check. But does it save money? Did we do it for less than £100? Well, yeah, we did. We started by visiting our friendly local gaming web store and got some deals. As with a lot of places that stock Games Workshop stuff but aren't necessarily Games Workshop stores, you can find some great discounts. I, as I've mentioned previously, tend to use Wayland Games, mainly because they tend to have good stocks of all the conversion bits I like to play with as well. On this occasion, I was able to pick up that Combat Patrol box for circa £70 as opposed to the 90 odd you paid Games Workshop for it, and in the process I picked up those mixed Sonic guns too, saving on postage. It was a good saving, sure, but whereas with the previous 2 Space Marine armies I've done, where the bits and the sprues and models and boxes can all be picked up individually and you can spread the cost over a few months, this one required a significant outlay in one go. You can't really buy the Combat Patrol box a sprue at a time, as and when you run out of models to paint. So, maybe one to save up for this one. Just something to consider. But as always, this is all just about ideas and inspiration. You go do you. I think this is a good option. You let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Let's go! As ever, I don't know how often I'm going to be putting together these videos and uploading content here, so if you find this concept interesting and worth following, then your best bet is to hit subscribe so you don't miss a beat. Hopefully some links to some other videos of mine should have appeared by now, and hopefully I'll see you next time.